Hey gang, for those of you who enjoy QF, a podcast about Howard Stern, and would like to donate to us just via PayPal, you can, using the email address johnnythegreek21@gmail.com. You can check the link in the description for the spelling, and it's also here on the graphic. And if you'd like to do more in terms of donations or subscriptions, you can use our Patreon account and subscribe via the Black Kluge level, and you can receive our weekly content that we're putting only on Patreon. It's exclusive for that platform. And anything over $5 is just gravy, guys. We love you. Thank you so much.
Artie, maybe it's to take makeup off.
You want to know something? I'm going to tell you something great about Beth.
Yeah.
She never moves her bowels.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Maybe once a month.
I've never seen. I've been.
Honest to God.
I've been away with Dana,
like, to the point that I'm afraid for her health.
We've
getting excellent reports on you.
Do you ever shut up, or does Mr. X just have to punch her in the face?
Now you're going to bring me. So I'm going to
ask the producer of the, Robin, when you get an opinion on your own, I'll talk to you.
Are you?
I've put out hit albums. I had the fastest selling album in history. What, are you going to be upset with Jason because he whacks off to your wife? I mean, that turns me on. And I got up, I pished. I don't want to be in a wig and a purse. I do that in my personal life. Yes, I'm like a woman who's been raped.
How much is Howard paying you a week? I'm paying you more, okay? Fucking give me a fucking break.
Now look, I don't want to get into a long explanation. That's not what I came here for. My audience isn't here to laugh.
I mean, Gary's got wife and kids. And if I leave, who the fuck is going to hire him? Joe, hi, you're on the air. Hey, man. Yeah. And nothing.
Listen, I think it's time you come out of the closet with Ralph.
Oh, please.
Because I know deep down, and I mean that literally.
All right, so I'm a homosexual.
You're a sword swallower.
Right. I'm a homosexual. You're right.
Thanks, Howard.
Right. I'm going to tell you. I'm caught. Good. In fact, that's good. That would be easy. I'd love to be gay. It'd be so goddamn simple. Then when people ask me about why I'm separated from my wife, I just go, you know what? I'm gay.
I told you something.
I will not say no. I told you it's a personal defect of mine.
You don't have to say no. All you have to say is, yeah, that'd be great. I could use the help with Casey. That's fine.
No, I don't want to be told how to say it. I told you my problem. I don't want to be asked. You don't know that?
Bad position.
No, you put me in a bad position. You asked me. Then I'm not a good guy. I want to be a good guy. Listen to me again. I'm going to say for the 15th billionth time since I've known you. Don't ask me if you can leave early. You know what you have to do, and you know when you have to leave. Don't ask me.
So that means when I have to work
when
late,
I say yes, you can leave, it means no.
Late, can I leave?
I have no idea what you make.
Really?
I have no idea. I got a guy now who's finding out the real names of the occupations of what the people do who bully me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm kind of a fighter, so...
Hey guys, welcome to QF Podcast about Howard Stern. I'm Jim Fix, a.k.a. Fillmore, and with me today is Chicago Bob, a.k.a. Bobby Chicago, and Sam. How are you guys?
Bobby Chicago.
Good. How are you guys doing?
Not too bad. Now, this particular series, guys, is going to be based on something Bob had wanted to do for a while, but we were trying to clear up a bunch of things to get through to it, and finally we're going to step our toe into it. It's Ray versus Wiggy, and it's going to be a series because there are just like reams and eons of clips that we're going to go through at a one by one. Sam?
I think we didn't step into it because it's clearly layered and really heavy, like we wanted to, but once you start, it's going to be like the 15 Foundation, you know?
Except that the 15 Foundation has an ending. I don't think there really is an ending to this one because there's so much there, man. There's so fucking much. And
it's going to be interesting.
I hope so, at the very least. And I want to give full credit to Mikee Rex, one of our faithful who put together a lot of these clips. A lot of them I do have, but in larger form. But he took the time to listen through a bunch and decided what might be great for a compilation. So he sent us a whole bunch, and we're going to be using a bunch of them today. Mm-hmm. But again, guys, we don't know how long this is going to go for. So I'm going to say part one, but this is part one of question mark many. You know what I mean? So we're going to get on started first talking, looking at a video before we, just one sec, Bob. Before we get started into the Howard clips, we're going to play some clips from Dr. Ramani, who's like Dr. Grande, kind of a YouTube expert on narcissism in general as a thing to help us out a little bit going forward. And I recommend you guys don't skip through these because they're short clips, but they're really, I think, essential. Bob?
Yeah, so my thinking on even having this as a topic is basically just this. Howard has for many years pretty much allocated all the blame onto his father about his childhood. There's a lot of discrepancies as to what's true, what isn't true, what isn't true. But one thing, I do feel like I see NPD run in families, and some of the stuff that Howard has said that sticks out to me is issues around his mother. And he doesn't really seem to focus on it too much, but he said some things over the years that seem unusual. And he describes a period in time when his mother's sister died. Yeah. And I guess that this sister had basically raised her. And from what I understand, she did have a traumatic childhood. During this time period, he talks about her being extremely withdrawn, emotionally depressed, suicidal. There were a lot of concerns over her possibly committing suicide. And then this ultimately led them, or her and the father, to find transcendental meditation, which he largely credits with her coming out of this depression. It's one of the only storylines that I've seen be fairly consistent with Howard. When it doesn't really seem to be disputed the way that his allegations are towards his father. It does sort of make sense in the larger scheme of things. And frankly, what we're going to show over the course of the series is we have these audio clips of his mom being abusive towards him.
Okay, but here's one thing that people have to understand before we go any further. This happened when he was in college. This didn't happen when he was a young kid. So this can't be explained away as, well, she was narcissistic and abusive because of this early loss in her life. And in his life. So he wasn't during his formative years that this was an issue. If she was as abusive as you might, or verbally abusive or reductive, let's say, when he was a young kid, it had nothing to do with the sister dying. It was ingrained already in her psyche.
So there was stuff before that, though, where he talks about how the only way that he could get through to her was to commiserate through basically trashing the other neighbors there, that she was very self-involved in her own stuff. A thing that we do seem to find with him is this theme that his needs were sort of neglected towards her own virtues and self-absorption. These are all things that you would see in a parent who has narcissistic personality disorder and a child. So yeah, we saw it even before that in some of the stuff he said.
Another thing about narcissistic parents, when I was reading a lot through a Reddit thread about narc parents, is they are an extension of themselves. So they don't treat children as, you're a baby and you're raising them to be their own person. You treat them as an extension of yourself, like an accessory, or just something of your own, like an appendage of some kind. So Ray treating Howard in some ways like an extension of it, like an extension of herself, and you can kind of see this treatment throughout his childhood, the way she treats him And you can kind of see that in the way he reflects back.
Well, he said that
of her.
He said that she literally told him, "You are me. Yeah. You are my representative." I mean, that's about as straightforward an example of what you're talking about as there is.
Well, one example that comes immediately to mind when Sam mentioned that was the exchange. Not the exchange. He explained how when he wanted to get an earring, her thoughts were, "You can't because your ear is my ear."
Exactly.
Like if you pierce your ear, you're piercing my ear. And I mean, I'm sorry if you're any kind of, I don't know. Maybe if he was psychologically weak or psychologically abused his entire life, maybe he'd buy into that. But he had to, if he had any kind of, I don't know, self-awareness, he had to know that that's bunk and that's nonsense. She's just not right, and do it anyway.
No, not if this started at a really young age to where Howard is really depersonalized and not really given a voice. And he's talked about her struggle became my struggle. Her story became my story. This is what you see in this dynamic to where, you know, it's the same with all NPD dynamics, but what makes it so insidious when it's a parent, particularly a mother, who tends to have more emotional access to a child than maybe a father would, is they're able to get in and really at an early age sort of erase your own identity, erase your own culture within yourself so that you assume their identity. You know, we see this now with Beth. We see this kind of dynamic with him and other people. But when you have a parent, particularly a mother, who just she never seems to validate Howard, even in his success in his later years. She continues to not validate who he is and his successes. So early on, if she's able to sort of invalidate him as a person, you will ultimately take on that person's story and personality, and you'll start to see yourself as indecipherable and non-autonomous to that person. That's what makes the real trauma comes through neglect, essentially, and acknowledging who the person is and really being there for them. You're just so absorbed in your own shit, basically.
And you see this constantly, even in his memoirs, trying to gain his mother's approval and gauge her mood. And it's his literal function of every day, of every point, of every facet of his life. Like he's always, in every point of his life, whether it be childhood or high school or college, his entire purpose is gauging his mother's temperature, checking it, making sure she's okay. Does she approve? It's constantly checking that, and it's constantly making sure she's okay.
It's symbiotic.
That's the dynamic now that he's set up with Beth, is that now she has to gauge him constantly. She has to take his temperature. Their whole goal is to just erase who you are, essentially. And
did you guys recently see that Gary Puppet posted a video of Beth with coveralls and feeding or grooming the kids? It's like 7 seconds.
Yeah,
and at one point he's
giant head.
It's truncated, and what we figure is he asks something, but the question is cut off. Like, what did I eat today? Was it cashews or almonds or something? And she answers for him. She goes something like, "It was almonds," or whatever it was. I could be getting that wrong, guys. I'm sorry. It was from her Instagram, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And then he goes, "And what was yours?" And she goes, "Gummy bears." And he goes, "Not anymore." And she looks down as if reprimanded. Chastised.
Unfortunately, did see that.
Yeah, and it's really disturbing if you know their relationship, like we know.
Because
it's all disturbing. It's not the first time.
No, it isn't.
They operate like old Soviet propaganda. It's repetition over and over. But we can't eat jelly beans. It's like this thing that they do where she already knew what he was talking about. All he said was, "What did I eat today? What can't you eat today? Jelly beans." They've obviously, this is not the first time this little quip has come up with them before, because you knew exactly what he was getting at. And that's kind of the way they operate. It's just, and this is again what Howard talks about with his mom, where he'd hear the same stories over and over again about,
I was just going to say, it's absolutely parallel to his mother. He echoes that same voice.
He literally sounds like her now.
Yeah, he does sound like her. Absolutely. So we're going to start playing with the Dr. Romney clips, and then we'll let them play out and go right into the Stern clips, guys.
When we use the term narcissistic child, let's get really clear on what that refers to.
We're talking about adult children here, Kyle, because I always caution people, because I hear from people who have adolescent kids all the time, my teenager is narcissistic. I'm like, every teenager is narcissistic. It's a built-in. It's just sort of a developmental stage. In some ways, children into adolescence, they are narcissistic, and it's like a snake shedding a skin. Mm-hmm. Your goal is that they go into adulthood, and now they have that core empathy and
okay, guys, going to let this one play through.
And self-reflective capacity, all those things that are healthy in adulthood. But we're talking about adult children. And what happens for a lot of parents is they have this narcissistic teenager, and they keep taking that wait and see through emerging adulthood, which pretty much goes to about 25. And then they're still really narcissistic. 27, narcissistic. 35, narcissistic, mean, negating, selfish, keep taking their money, still very entitled.
Now, obviously, not all of these things apply to Howard because he became successful and didn't need to take anybody's money, except not dole it out to his underlings, obviously, in a fair and equitable way.
Then the parents are like, oh my goodness, what have I wrought?
Okay. And I'm going to play the next clip, which is called Possible Causes. And this one's really important because, guys, we are starting at the root of what we think was the issue. And we can discuss this after the thing.
Are they at fault?
This is where it gets to be an ultra complicated conversation, something I really do get into in the book. Here's the rub. You had something to do with it, but that is not meant as blame. So, for example, when your children were in critical developmental stages, you may have done everything in your power to keep your kids safe, to keep food on the table, roof over everyone's head, but had to work a lot. So maybe you weren't there as much as you wanted to be. Okay, so this is Ben Stern fits right into this mold 100%. Sure. And by his own admission, well, he'll say, look, I worked, and on the weekends I made time for the family, but they understood me as my schedule was I got home late, but I was the sole breadwinner, and that explains that.
So do a lot of parents, though, fit into that category.
Oh, yeah. And then I guess so the onus is on the mother to create the balance, like in the interim. And this is where we're going to get into the other aspect of the rearing.
And for a child with a particularly sensitive or vulnerable temperament, you're hardworking, even if you're kind in the little bits of time you saw them, maybe there was something lacking there. Maybe you were going through a really bad marriage when your kids were in certain developmental periods. And so they grew up with a lot of that tension and that conflict. I don't like ascribing that a fault to that, but the fact is the parents were sort of the background to all of this. Also, it could be.
Okay, guys, you know the drill.
Be that you had a narcissistic spouse. One of you raising this narcissistic adult child was narcissistic. Mm-hmm. And maybe you didn't call out the spouse for being entitled, for being so selfish and self-focused.
So then in this case, when he's doing, the thing of working, which one spouse would, like many do, then Ray would have to be the tender, loving mother. But as we know, she had a traumatic experience of losing her sister. So he was tending to her and she wasn't tending to them.
But as an adult, he was already an adult when that happened. This wasn't him in his formative years.
But she was in his formative years, from what I understand, pretty self-absorbed and really never validated him. So, the important point through what she's saying here is if you have one parent that's working, which is Ben in this case, Ben is old school. We're talking about a guy now, I think he's in his 90s. We're talking about a guy from a different, era.
Who went through the Depression.
Right. So his probably, you know, what that generation came from was the mother is there to sort of tend to the children, you know, but I don't think he was getting that wasn't happening in the case of Ray, because, you know, even prior to Ray having her sister die, from my understanding is she had a very traumatic sort of upbringing in general. Right. So, you know, you always see trauma with people that have NPD. So I think that possibly what happened with Howard was Ray had always been like that. And it was just sort of an understanding that she was a brick wall and a stone wall. And maybe he was looking to his dad for more of the emotional support because his dad seemed to be a little bit more human. And he may have not received that, and he may have falsely projected a lot of these issues onto him when really his mom, sort of her duty, she was a stay-at-home mom, would have been to tend to a lot of these issues, and it just sounds like she never did. So, or
I'm thinking maybe Ben did realize that Ray at some point wasn't like that. And that's why he became more in tune to that. And that's why he was the one that was like, here's the puppet show. Here's the guitar. Here's he was the one that was actually providing the stuff for these hobbies. It wasn't Ray, it was Ben. Yeah, and he actually did placate him with these things. So maybe he was actually a little bit aware that she wasn't in tune to these things.
Yeah, he was. But nothing can supplement that kind of relationship with a mother and child. And you do see this where someone's just working and that entire area is being neglected. So you throw toys at it, you throw money at it. You know, this isn't an uncommon thing. And that actually sort of compounds the issue because now you're kind of stoking the fires of entitlement within the kid. So,
well, the other thing is people seem to forget that him and Ellen, like Howard and Ellen, were very different personalities. Ellen was very independent. She was stoic. I think she got more from Ben's side of the family, meaning like you just like life sucks, get a fucking helmet, keep moving forward. And whereas Ray was always, oh, you know, this sucks and that sucks, you know, like basically a female version of Howard before he could be Howard. And and he explained, and we'll play these clips later on. I'm sorry to beat them to the punch, guys, but that they were at loggerheads most of the time. Ellen and Ray would fight, and that's because for any number of reasons. But that if she was independent minded, I imagine what's her name, Ray, saw Ellen as unmoldable, like she could not impose her will on Ellen, so she was going to do it with Howard, who was clearly cut from a different cloth completely.
Didn't have the same boundaries, right?
So I don't know if it's not moldable. I think it's maybe Ellen just knew how to shove it off, whereas Howard was deeply affected. Like Ellen knew what her tricks and her games were to manipulate and gaslight and self-involve and just go down this road of narcissism. And she knew what the traps were, the sand trap was, where Howard didn't.
She did. Yeah. She
might not have been able,
and said she gray rocked it. And Howard's mom, you know, the funny thing to me, and what we're gonna show pretty clearly, Howard's mom views him as weak. She knows he has no boundaries. She knows she can have his way with him. They're on fucking late night TV. She's telling everybody he's a wuss.
He's a wuss.
And it's funny, like he holds on to this one clip from his dad, who I think was his lifeline.
Yeah.
And just wasn't there for him the way he should have been. But really, it wasn't his job.
No.
I don't know. We'll get into that. But, you know, here he holds on to this one clip of his dad calling him an idiot from when he was 9. And in his adult years,
being a little racist shithead.
His mom comes out and goes, "This is the biggest wuss." She literally calls him the biggest wuss that's ever lived.
Right.
And he like doesn't want to acknowledge it because narcissists don't want to acknowledge their true source of pain. They want to create the false self.
He also didn't want to acknowledge the fact that he was being an annoying piece of shit and a racist.
Well, that too. Sure.
Yeah, so there's the blame gets shunted elsewhere at all costs. So he learned that real quickly as well. And Dr. Romney's going to talk a little bit about that whole the spoiling when that becomes a substitute, a surrogate instead of a parent. You're getting all these toys and whatnot.
Because you couldn't, because it wasn't appropriate, because it's not what people did in your culture.
Or you didn't know.
You just didn't know. You didn't know what it would do. And all of that can be the factors that sort of lead to adult children with narcissism. What's interesting is I've worked with many parents with adult children who are narcissists. And they're pretty devastated. Like, they've usually been wrecked financially. These narcissistic kids have cleaned them out, meaning that these parents would pay for college, would clear student loans, would give them debt.
All right, like now we're talking more along the lines of what they did for him. Like, he didn't clean them out. That's one aspect where this differs. But they absolutely provided him with the entire foundation for him to succeed as an adult, whereas a lot of people simply never had that. A lot of people didn't have their fucking parents paying for this and that and whatever. And, she went shopping. Ray went shopping with him for clothes and for lingerie to get for Allison when they were getting married.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
Howard's narrative about being self-made and I did it all on my own. I mean, he seemed to have every advantage there could have been at that time. I mean, both parents. He got into Boston University on some pity fuck. Like, I don't even know what that thing was. He got a car. He got it all paid for. His wife supported him through everything. Like,
yes.
I don't. He has a power agent. He bit most of his stuff from other guys that were already established. Like, I don't know what he actually did for himself. Really, at the end of the day, like it seemed like he had a huge support network.
Hooked up with the right agent and had and was dealing with competition who were nicer than he actually was and wouldn't actually take him to task on certain things and didn't play the game more ruthlessly enough. Yep, Sam.
And we talked about this with Ben, and you started off without any student loans and a car that you owned, which, by the way, is humongous.
Massive. Yeah. And paid his freight. Like, the parents paid for his entire fucking post-secondary education. Unbelievable.
Payments for houses, would buy them cars, would pay for stuff for their kids. I mean, these parents kept giving and giving and giving. And I think the parents thought that if I keep giving them money, maybe they'll start being nice to me.
I found that fascinating. Number 3, just called Dealing with Adult Narcissists.
I just didn't know. Right. And I think that's a lot of parents like, I just didn't know. This is why we do this.
Right.
We do this so hopefully another generation of parents know. And now there's often a lot of guilt. I'm the one who made this monster. So then they'll engage in things to assuage their guilt. So I'm going to keep being the punching bag. I made this, so now I have to be punished for it. And that's also a common dynamic. Or I have to stick around, or who walks out on their own kid. That's often a theme you see too. So it's an incredibly painful thing to watch.
And I wonder if they feel that on some level as well, his parents.
I mean, the guy's a total shithead, I would think.
But if Ray's a narcissist, I don't know if she necessarily does, but I definitely think Ben does.
Yeah,
I think I see sometimes in those, and this is very speculative, but sometimes when I would see his parents, it was almost like Ben was like, oh man, like, this guy's a fucking shithead. You know what I mean? Like, my son is out here with strippers, and I don't. This is, and then the mom, of course, is happy and whatever because he's famous and getting notoriety. But I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But I just feel like Ben is just like, this fucking dude is the lowest of the low, kind of like this is just such bad shit.
Yeah.
No, you're 100% right, Bob. Like, it was always the most super uncomfortable thing that would happen when they were involved. Ben would look completely mortified, but Ray would always end the segment smiling completely ear to ear, and then just completely, no matter what, so like elated just to be there and supportive no matter what. Like, it didn't matter what just happened. But Ben, not so much.
And I think they're coming at it from two different angles. I think Ben would be along the lines of, well, it's my son. I got to support him. I got to have his back. He's still my son, regardless of how much this pains me. With Ray, not that she was a stage mom, but she was more than happy to be on the line, on the phone, in the studio when he was doing a show. Go with him on Nightline with the Nightlife or whatever the show was with David Brenner, and have no issues. Like,
she's a narcissist
because she's a narcissist. Absolutely. And so it's less about supporting him and more about, I'm going to have my fucking say, and I'm not afraid to fucking say it. Yeah.
And it wasn't even like she was supporting it. She owned it, and she owned him.
Yes, she did.
Most of the time that they talked about it. And Ben was Ben's a man's man. He's not going to sell his son out. He came from the old military, but he was sitting there thinking about my 40-year-old son's talking about jerking off. But the one thing is that they don't seem to dispute ever is that she was really self-absorbed. She went through this time period that she trashed the neighbors, that she didn't really care. I mean, she'll be like, yeah, when Howard wouldn't get his homework done, I told him he wasn't going to camp. Stuff like that. They don't really seem to dispute stuff like that. This whole phase with her, this whole dynamic with her, when Howard's like, yeah, my sister, when she would get going on her stuff, she wouldn't listen to her. And she doesn't even dispute telling Howard these stories about, the Depression and the Holocaust. And she doesn't dispute any of that. But you can't tell a kid something like that. When you're telling kids those types of stories, those need to come later in life. When you tell that to a kid when he's super young and has all this affection for the mother, you need to save those for another time. They don't really dispute that she ever laid that on him.
Right.
They don't ever really dispute those sorts of things, which is why I actually think they're accurate.
Mm-hmm. Sam?
Remember what also she did with Ellen about the one fiance that Ray hated?
Well, she was dating a Puerto Rican guy or something like that, and she...
And what did Ray do? Yeah. Ray did everything in her power to ruin that. And she doesn't deny it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, are you talking about when she sent? I remember a story where she sent Howard in when she was with a boyfriend. And again, is what you see with a parent with NPD. Very little boundaries. Like they will go to that level to disrupt whatever is going on with you, whatever. They won't take you to the side. They're going to do something to humiliate you. They're going to take down your boundary. They're going to do whatever they can do. And humiliation is a common tool with a parent with NPD.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's continue with this one. And there's another one more last clip.
And here's the bottom line. If indeed somebody was genuinely abusive, rejecting, neglectful, and cruel to their child, and this is the adult child they got, if you did do that to your child, I mean, this is those chickens coming home to roost. My guess is those people may not be watching these videos, but if they are, there was a complicity there. And all I could suggest is that those parents hopefully get their own therapy, their help. I'm sure they, in some cases, do feel quite remorseful, but you can't unring a bell.
Okay, just a few seconds.
So it's really still about how to find techniques to manage that relationship in the present time.
Okay, and the last one is just called it's just some summation. It's only a minute and a half.
I like the sleeping dog.
Yeah, I noticed that giant dog there.
I never intended for this to happen. I look backwards, I see it. Some of them will even own, I was overindulgent. I gave them everything they wanted. I never said no. I was loose with money. We had the resources. And a very common one is they themselves came from environments they came from families that didn't have enough money, didn't have enough resource, and they wanted the joy of being able to ensure didn't have that.
That's always been my contention. They overindulged him and Ellen, I'm sure, but mostly him because he's the fucking baby as well and a boy. And they didn't set enough boundaries, and they did not. Well, I mean, the boundaries that Ray did which were all self-serving, if our guess is accurate, and but they didn't actually punish him the way you'd punish a kid in those days by taking away stuff. He got more stuff. And then he had such an awful behavior. He learned somehow that if he was annoying enough and whiny enough, he would get whatever the fuck he wanted. And they didn't have the backbone to say, no, that ain't going to happen. Or she didn't, because she wanted to control him. in a certain way, and Ben wasn't around to lay down any kind of boundaries. And then, so when Ben would try to set boundaries, I don't think Howard would take him seriously, because it's like, well, you're not my dad. You're not around. You're providing all this money, but it's not like you have a presence in my life. And then he decided, he's going to be a mama's boy because that's the one I can control 100%. Or I can be like, it's symbiotic. I don't know. I'm of a couple ways thinking about it, but that's my first takeaway, that they just gave him way too much and did not punish him enough when he did wrong.
So as a parent, there's things like you can provide things, as many things, and materialistic things, and taking them away and things like that might not mean as much if you're just so flippant with it.
Yeah.
But you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent about rules, and you have to be consistent about everything.
Yeah.
If your word doesn't mean anything, kids don't take you seriously, and they have to live up to their obligation too. And that is the primary thing I do with my own child. If you're not living up to your end, and I'm not living up to what I say and set forth, then it's meaningless, and they know it's meaningless, and you're meaningless.
Yeah.
That's just it.
Yeah. The boundaries don't mean anything if you keep moving the goalposts. You're right. Bob?
But here's the thing with what was said in the previous video and what's being said now. When you're disciplining a kid, what Ray would do, that I know for a fact that Howard would talk about, because Howard talks about how much camp meant to him, that it was the only time he felt well, was she repeatedly threatened that. So we're starting to get into cruelty at a certain point. She said if Howard wasn't doing his homework, all I had to say to him was, I won't send you to camp. Okay, those two things don't align up. So if the punishment that you're doling out is way overkill, which I think was the case with whatever Ray was doing, and God knows what they haven't even talked about. She may have threatened to send him outside. You know, he was scared of going out. He's scared of everything.
Yeah, military school. Military school.
This is the only thing that they're talking about. She would go right to his heart. You know, there's a big difference between, and this is the extremes that actually make everything worse. Is here you have Ben that was probably not throwing necessarily money at it the way that we think about it, but hey kid, I've worked fucking 90 hours this week. You want pets? Do you want, I mean, what do you want? Tell me, literally.
Just let
you
me
want
relax.
puppets? You want a dog? Like, so then you have that, and then you have this sort of remarkable cruelty that I think probably came with his mother, to where there's no middle ground that would be, because a kid isn't doing his homework. No one wants to do their homework. To threaten the most prized thing to that person that has an emotional attachment on top of that. Not like saying we're going to take your video games away from you. Saying you're not going to camp, which he has expressed many times, which he did into his teen years. She knew that she was that transcends the crime, in my opinion. And that again shows, people with NPD are extremely cruel. They love to, you see a really high level of sadism with people that have NPD.
And I noticed this with like other NPD parents, like Hilaria Baldwin, for example. She'll videotape her kids and put it on Instagram having fits. And she'll say things to them and videotape them. And it's the most exploitative, vile, disgusting, humiliating thing I've ever seen.
They're into humiliation.
Yeah. Hilaria Baldwin's one we're eventually going to just make a side project and do, like, every once in a while do an episode that's going to be, adjacent. And there's a wealth of material. There's so much, and it's constantly being replenished by new videos, new Instagram posts, new like TMZ type things, or Inside Hollywood, Inside Edition kind of shit, where they film them talking, and the two of these whores can't stop.
Her narcissism parenting though is horrible. She will film her children having fits. I mean, Bob, we would have a field day. You got to be on one for this.
I don't know anything about her, to be honest.
We'll give you the crash course.
We'll fill you in.
Yeah.
And so in their fashion, they really thought they were paying it forward to the new generation, and yet they may not have then been paying attention to the emotional enrichment of their child. We're in an interesting generation, Kyle, of helicopter parenting. Parents who manage every darn detail of their kids' lives to a fault. They never want their child to be sad. They never want their child to be disappointed. They never want their child to be frustrated. They fight with the teacher. They fight with the coach.
I'll give you guys an example. And my oldest sister and her husband, they had their first kid. They were extremely, extremely cautious with her. So they had cushions around every sharp object in the fucking house. I'm not joking. Every little like TV cabinet or, table that had, glass edges or something like that, or not glass edges, but maybe, wicker thing that was a little abrasive, whatever. They had stuff around it so that if she fell, she wouldn't get hurt. This kid, I think, took in both of their anxiety as a youngster, and she developed selective mutism until she was about 8 or 9. So she would only talk to her little sister, her parents, but never the teachers, never the other students, and certainly not to the rest of the family. She's now grown up. She doesn't remember. She claims she doesn't remember doing this, but I know she does remember it. I'm certain she remembers it. And I looked at the causes, and it's a fascinating bit of reading. But basically, if you don't allow a kid to fuck up, if you don't allow him to fuck up and understand that losing is part of, winning as well, and that you can fail, but the goal is the effort. You have to want something, and you appreciate something much more when you've worked hard at it, absolutely, than when it's given to you. With him, when did he ever have time to appreciate any struggle? Except what he claims is this, racial struggle when he was living in Roosevelt. That's not the same thing. That's not, effort, reward / I just find that I think they entitled him to too much, and he was way too sensitive for whatever reason. He was born massively sensitive, overly sensitive.
Sure. So, there's no perfect parent. There's no perfect anything.
No.
I think the main thing that we need to get into when we're talking about Ray is neglect and frankly cruelty, and I think those are the two things that parents need to be the most aware of, because no one's ever going to be a perfect parent ever.
Right.
But I do think that there are elements of cruelty. I do think there are areas of neglect. And what you're talking about with Howard and his, I think he projected a lot of it on his dad, because it kind of sucks. His dad is kind of like the kid that always gets straight A's and then he gets a B, and you go, why'd you get a B? Meanwhile, the other person's getting straight F's. So you just write them off, which is his mom. And I think it's a little bit easier for people to I think it's easier for people to blame the dad in a lot of ways, because it's a familiar storyline. The moms take a lot of heat, no doubt about it. But I think the abusive dad is a more familiar storyline in the media and to a lot of people, which is why he kind of went with that.
Yeah.
But definitely when you're talking about critiquing, especially because his dad had experience in that field, where I come from, I'm not an accomplished musician. I did play with some pretty good guys, but my whole thing is like, when I have a friend who's making music for fun, I'm always going to tell him it's good, that it's great. When I have a friend who's really trying to make it, and not that my opinion even matters that much, but I do have friends that come to me because they respect my pedigree of where I am as a drummer, and they'll ask me about it. Like when it comes to that, when someone's trying to make something a profession, you really can't sugarcoat it, because this is someone that's about to swim with sharks, like, no, you need to polish that up. And someone who's smart and will make it will recognize that. Someone who's sensitive and they're like, oh no, they're going to struggle and they're going to take it as an attack, where you're like, no, this really isn't an attack. Like, you're getting into a competition now. You're not just doing this because this is fun. Yeah. Like, you're talking about taking those next steps. So.
Yeah. I mean, you guys don't have kids, but I thought it was so hard that's why I only had one.
Well, I mean,
I was like,
imagine?
I'm gonna do one, and that seems enough. I thought it was
One
like
and
a
done.
vast conspiracy. I was like, Jesus Christ! I mean, this is really tough. I don't know how people do this more than once.
Sam, I have a friend who was one of 14. One of 14.
Oh my God.
And she said, like, when we'd line up for the school bus, it looked like one of those Russian dolls, and you take all the dolls out.
I have those nesting dolls. Yeah.
Whatever they're called. And they were not all close. It wasn't all, they were physically close, and that was the problem. Like, you didn't have like space in the house for everybody. Can you imagine the bathroom problems just with that number?
God.
It was unbelievable. So let's continue this one.
With everyone, my child first. Look what happened in this college scandal. So these parents want they foster that entitlement, and then these kids who grow up like this can't tolerate frustration or disappointment or sadness. Those inabilities are the core of adult narcissism.
Okay, this first clip is a long one, guys, but it's called Wiggy talks about how he and Ray used to rip people apart to feel better. Ray talks bad about anyone little Howard liked.
Oh my God.
It's 12 minutes, but let's slog through it.
Everyone with their differences. My mom laid it on me, though. She gave me the guilt.
You think, well, how did the conversation end?
We moved on to another topic.
Oh, okay.
Where we basically rip people apart and then we feel better. That's how
nice.
My mom and I, that's how we relate. We go through every person we know and...
Who was on the list last night?
Oh, I don't know. I don't want to say. It's private. No, like my mom, that's my mom and I. That's our relationship. We were very close.
Okay. Let me play this one out a little bit more because I want to get all the context in full.
I was living in her house growing up, and she would, get a hold of me. And I'd say, you why I like Mrs. Blodnick? She's such a nice mom.
Oh, you like Mrs. Blodnick, huh? Oh. Well, let me tell you something about her. Her son, he needs an operation, And she's taking him to a hospital on Long Island. Now, let me tell you something. If a child of mine had a serious illness, I wouldn't take it to any hospital on Long Island.
Okay, hold on.
I would be marching myself right into the city. Let me tell you. That's the kind of mother who cares.
Oh, boy.
So you say you like Mrs. Blodnick. Ah, you like her. But you don't know. She doesn't make a sacrifice. You're going to make it convenient for herself to go to the hospital on Long Island. But a good doctor is in Manhattan. In life and death, you go to the hospital in the city.
Normally, you have to go, he's full of shit, but I believe him 100% on this one.
Oh, yeah.
I totally believe him because he didn't stutter once. It was, obviously that stupid imitation. Sam?
So Ray's threatened by the fact that he
and what's she doing?
He likes some sort of maternal kindness from some neighborhood mom and might have said, hey, I was over Mrs. Blotnick's house. She might have made me a sandwich. She was really nice. Oh, you think she's nice? Let me tell you something. She took her son to a suburban hospital.
Which is what? What have I talked about a million times? Devaluing.
Yeah.
They have to devalue. To. She has to in that scenario. Because her main supply, which is Howard, is starting to allocate supply elsewhere. So she has to devalue that.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what she's done. But in the process, she's teaching her kid to not trust adults and that most people are bad. But yeah, this is devaluement, classic.
Well, this is, what this is on par with? Okay, and first of all, you don't know what people's situations is. Maybe it was not a serious thing. So you go take the kid to the local hospital and get him his boo-boo fucking stitched up or whatever. But here's the thing. When he would talk about Jay Leno later, like years later, and talk about Jay Leno, how he's a scumbag because they were going to let go of people and he decided I'm going to give them some of my salary and keep them on, whatever. He was a scumbag because he didn't want more money. He's like, oh no, that's the network. I wanted to get rid of them, not the network. Well, he was actually projecting, first of all, that he would just get rid of those fucking people if it was him in that situation. And he was taking something Jay Leno did, which was actually an amazing thing, and trying to gaslight you into thinking he was an asshole. How's this any different in concept?
It's not, because I think she's projecting, and I think she wouldn't have taken Howard into Manhattan. I'm not even kidding.
But she's threatened by the compliment, which she shouldn't be. It's completely.
It's another person.
She shouldn't be threatened by it.
This is the
something
level
non-threatening.
This is how exhausting, and I want you guys to think about what everyone in his circle is going through, because it's the same thing. When we talk about self-absorption, it's beyond taking a photo or always talking. Every fucking thing is about these people. Things that have nothing to do with these people is about these people. This is what drains everyone around him, where you're sitting here going, what does she care? And Howard probably isn't saying, hey, I want this to be my second mom. This is what true clinical self-absorption looks like. It's not just talking about yourself. It's like, oh my God, everything's about you. Holy fucking shit.
Do you know that the one of the perfect clips you chose, the one that we did together for the all-around show, wasn't any specifically themed or wasn't chronological. The Planks guy that he had to devalue because he couldn't do it. So this guy was getting accolades that Howard saw as it's not that guy getting accolades. I'm not getting accolades.
Right. Accolades are going over to him and not to me. So I need to devalue that. It's like,
it's shit.
You're giving him some drugs. I want the drugs. Don't give him the drugs. Give me the drugs again. I could have done it.
Yeah. Fuck him.
Or just like, or for example, like Ronnie getting treated nice by Adam Sandler. Suddenly he's your daddy.
Yeah.
Suddenly he's your boss.
Do you see how it manifests?
That's the exact same sort of bullshit.
Let's add another
again.
one. Mike Ganji going to see Scott Einziger in L.A. when he was there for a visit, and he went and saw him. And this is in the middle of the lawsuit that Howard has against Scott Einziger. Why are you going to see that guy? Well, your lawsuit has nothing to do with my friendship with that guy. That's a friendship we're talking about. And the guy doesn't work here anymore. He's not a coworker. We're not going to talk shop necessarily. And you're upset because I'm not treating him like your enemy. Like he's my enemy because he's your enemy. What does one have to do with the other? Oh, and other people are going, well, yeah, that was stupid of Ganji. That was his boss. You shouldn't. Fuck you. How many people do you know? The boss hates your best friend. Well, the boss doesn't have to deal with your best friend, but he's your best friend. That's the point. You just commiserate with him and talk with him and whatever, and work is work and friends is friends. So
even now with Ronnie, I know about your rich friends in Vegas. Those are your new friends. I know about them. And the guy's like, Ronnie's like, what are you talking about? He's like, a couple of them have some money, but it's the same. It's a cycle of abuse.
Ronnie, let me tell you something about your friends in Vegas, mister. Right. Do you think they take their kids to LV General? I don't think so. Let's continue.
Oh, yeah, I hate her. My mom would get a hold of me and correct me about how every mom was bad that I liked.
Yeah.
You know who I like? Mrs. Schmednick, who is the substitute teacher at school. She seems so pretty and nice.
Oh, that's phony.
Well, what do you mean, Mom? What do you mean she's a phony?
Listen, she's a substitute teacher. She's sitting there preaching to everybody. You gotta love the blacks, and you gotta love this one and that one.
Okay.
Meanwhile, she's moving away. She said she likes blacks, but under her breath, she's saying something else. You have to set an example. She's a big phony baloney.
This I don't believe.
This one, I'm not 100% on that one.
A substitute teacher isn't saying anything like that. Bullshit, lie.
And also, a substitute teacher just goes there to fill in. They don't give a fuck. They're there to get and they don't have to stay afterwards. They're there to just fill in for the day, and that's it. They don't have a vested interest in those students or any students because they're by nature of the job. They're ephemeral.
But I think he's just throwing out like how flippant and common. Just it didn't even matter who it was. She was going to trash him, which I absolutely believe that to be fact.
Yeah. Now, do I believe that he had a pretty substitute teacher and she said she was phony because she was pretty? Probably. But about blacks, no.
But no, he's just saying, he's like, look, it doesn't matter. Mrs. Schmedna, he made up a name. He's saying this is how prevalent it was. Substitute teacher, who cares? She still couldn't let her off the hook. She had to dig into her character, dig it. Like, this is really NPD. This is what NPD is. This is even the most casual thing had to get into whoever this made up person is, deepest character, hypocrite, bullshit artist. Like, that's how severe it was.
Yeah.
Could have been like, I had a nice drive-through person at McDonald's. They gave me extra napkins. Well, let me tell you.
But that's what he's saying. He's saying that even that small, she had to go down into their core. That's NPD. That's NPD. Yeah.
Oh, I hate her.
She opened your eyes.
She would make me aware of every bad thing going on.
And this still goes on today?
I go, Mom, you know who I like, Mrs. Blibbits.
Mm-hmm. You like Mrs. Blibbits? What do you like about her?
Well, we go over there and she lets us, she gets us all in the car and she lets us eat over there, and she takes us for Italian food in the car.
Takes you for Italian food. You see the size of
her? Jesus Christ Almighty!
I 100% agree that happened because.
Oh yeah.
I know, growing up, all of my friends who went over my grandparents' house and my parents' house for dinner, who weren't, Italian, who didn't have Italian immigrant grandparents, were like, came over for dinner and thought this was like something to behold. They were like, what the hell is going on? Like, it was like a never ending feast, and they've never seen anything like this in their life. And I, in turn, went over their house and was sweating bullets, worried we were going to run out of food and not to eat too much. So,
yeah, that's the Italian way. No doubt about that.
There you go.
That's good. Her children are heavy and she's heavy. You think that's a good mother? You think she's doing the right thing and letting you do whatever you want? You think that's responsible? You think that's a lot of fun? Please.
Well, you know who I like, though? I like Schmorman.
You like Mrs. Schmorman?
Yeah, and her husband's really nice because, the dad just sits and talks to us and, talks to us about what happened in the war in World War II.
Okay, let's go.
Oh, yeah, he does. He's a big bore. I go over there. That's all that gentleman talks about. He talks about the war every minute. It's time to move on with his life. What is that? He's boring people.
Okay, now isn't this coming from a woman who, according to him, talked about the Holocaust and how, and family members that were lost in the Holocaust and the war, and she doesn't want a German ice cream scoop and she doesn't want a German car and all this because everything German, whatever. This is the problem. This is the conundrum we have. We have based a show on an insane pathological liar and a narcissist. So we have to take clips in which he's recounting something. We have to decide for ourselves what's true and what isn't, and we're the arbiters. And a lot of people are going to criticize us for saying, well, if some of it's a lie and part of it isn't, who are you to determine which is bullshit and which isn't? Well, we have ears. He has tells when he is bullshitting. There's a lot of stuttering, stammering, and all this shit. So guys, we hear that complaint. We've heard it already. Enough. You're gonna have to trust us to know what we're talking about based on what we see from human behavior in our own lives, and ultimately we have to have an opinion. So we're giving it to you. So let's not have any of that in the comments, please.
I also think it's clear he's a bold-faced liar, but I also do think that these conversations like he's having right now are his psyche going on in his literal head. Like, I do think, even though he's clearly, you know, it's a paradox, he's not telling the truth multiple times. And one conversation where he says it was nonstop depressing war stories all the time in my house. And now he's saying, oh, you like the war? That's a bore. We need to move on. That's okay. So clearly, which is it? Pick a line, pick a narrative. But that doesn't make any sense. But I do think that he is having these thoughts in his head. Like, this is his stream of consciousness.
But I don't
had to come from somewhere. Yeah.
What he's doing right now, he's not giving literal examples. His point is that this was rampant. It didn't matter how petty it was. He's making people up. He's acknowledging he's making people up.
Yes, we know that he's making up names to protect people that may have really existed.
Well, I don't even think it's that. I think he's just coming up with examples. Hey, I like vanilla ice cream. You know what? You like vanilla ice cream? That, you know, he's just making shit up, and he's just saying this is how repetitive it was. Well, I think they always partially tell on themselves, and I think he may be alluding to some of her hypocrisy here. But no, I think he's just really driving home, which he's absolutely being sincere about, is how rampant this was, how petty it was, how you know it was sort of a relentless nature, is kind of what he's saying, and that would all be very consistent with someone who has NPD for sure.
So he's not necessarily recounting the right story, but he's probably accurate in giving the flavor of what it was like to hear this stuff growing up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Is this like I don't know if this would be a narcissistic thing, but you know, in the Sunday paper, how they used to have the big bride section, like how they used to have all the brides where they give your picture. Like like
married couples, like congratulations to
and then they'd post the bride, picture, and they'd announced the bride, and they'd post the bridal photo in the big Sunday paper for every city.
We used to get couples, but not just the bride.
I don't know it. I believe you though. Yeah, no, I don't.
Yeah, and it would be like a 3-page or 4-page spread in every big city paper. So my mom used to do every Sunday. I don't know if this is narcissistic or not, but we used to do a thing when we were little. We'd go, "Who's the prettiest bride?" and we'd go line by line.
No, but that's something you talk about with your daughter. You say, like, do you like this dress? You know, what do you think about this hairstyle? How does this suit? Women do that all the time.
That might be.
Well, what would be narcissistic is if you did what Howard's mom did and talked about why everyone's ugly, why this is bad, why this one, why, and then at the end of it, you didn't have one you thought was pretty. You thought that they were all trash. You know, that would be narcissism. Like how Howard is with literally everything and everybody. Everyone gets picked apart.
Mean.
Let's see, pregnant, shotgun, whore. You know, third husband, you know, like if you went down the list and decided to shit on every single one of them in a certain way.
Right. That would have been.
At least it would have been creative and funny.
But I like him. He talks to me like
yeah, he talks to you over and over with the same story. What is that? I mean, good. I'm glad you like him.
And I walk out of there dizzy. I realize I had the only good parent.
She's not still doing this now. She's changed, hasn't she? Oh, stop.
She here to get a hold of you. No, of course she's changed. You know, she's a meditator now.
Right.
She was younger.
Hoping.
Oh, my God. Everything was a lecture back then.
Okay, now this is...
I walked out of there realizing I had the only good parent.
Yeah.
See that?
Yeah, but he was being sarcastic. He's like, I didn't realize you were just Jesus and that everyone else was bad, which is how a narcissist would want you to kind of feel walking away.
And he mentions, I mean, like we already know he's talking about elementary school or, you know, like junior high when he's giving these stories. But then he mentions outright TM, so definitely the before and after. And that very well may have been a drastic change in her personality to where she didn't feel she had to do that anymore. But I found that funny that was in her to make herself feel better about herself. Amazing. Let's continue.
I found a spoon from Germany.
What? What do you mean?
We don't allow anything German in this house. I didn't realize you know my ice cream spoon that we use to scoop out the ice cream?
Yeah.
It's from Germany. I threw it right in the garbage.
You did? We love that spoon.
It was made in Germany. Your grandma Rose, she had to. It's terrible. Our whole family was
just get a little bit more.
wiped out. Sit down. I want to tell you about the Holocaust.
What about all those bad parents?
Now you got to hear what a bad world it is. Grandma Rose was a little girl. She had no one. Her brothers, her sisters. Everyone was killed by the Nazis. She hid on a farm.
There must have been more farms in Germany.
There are farms in Germany, lots of them.
Hid her in
There are farms everywhere, you fucking idiot.
With this instability in a NPD home is something as insignificant as an ice cream spoon. He didn't realize that was going to escalate into this extreme trauma. Like he's starting to tell on himself the longer, and not even telling on himself, starting to reveal more as this kind of goes on. Yeah. And he's like saying, we didn't even know this. It's a fucking spoon. No one knew what was going on. He's like, this spoon escalated into just extreme trauma. Yeah. And I had to hear about this trauma. And like, he's just kind of, I think, reflecting on how unstable everything was and how there was landmines all over. And that's NPD. It's these landmines and instability and trauma everywhere, even a spoon.
But it also creates like this, for Ray, for being this like liberal thinking person that he also hails, it also creates this blanketed hatred towards, people were forced into a situation during a wartime that they necessarily didn't agree with or didn't want to be a part of,
Well, again, it's kind of a classic cult leader. All these NPD people are sort of little cult leaders in their own way with their circles. Whereas you can't trust the outside world. The outside world is a scary place. You need to stick with me. I'm going to tell you, and he talks about that a lot, how he was terrified of the world, and his mom was sort of the person who guided him, and it's carried him. I think Howard is terrified. We see it now with the COVID stuff. I think he's completely terrified of the outside world on every level. I think he is completely frightened by every single thing.
But any logical thinking person can understand Nazis bad. You don't need to add this layer of extra, this extra layer of fear, guilt, depravity on top of it to make it terrible.
Well, you do if you have NPD.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Well, especially considering post World War II, that would have been such a huge part of the history books in school, at least in North America. Anyway, there's still Japanese textbooks that omit their atrocities in the rape of Nanking, and that's part of why that's still an issue politically, because they're not admitting their culpability in these horrible atrocities. So at any rate, for Ray to say this, isn't it akin to superstition?
I think it's akin. I think it's just akin to abuse. Okay. You don't know what you're getting into, any minor thing, and then now you have to suffer a trauma. I'm gonna scoop ice cream with this thing. That thing was made by people that tortured your grandpa. You're like, what? What? I didn't do anything wrong. I was scooping ice cream. No, you need to be abused. That thing, that's NPD again. That's what NPD is.
It's almost like when Beth was like, we're going somewhere, and he has a tickle in his throat. Yeah. And then he magnifies it. Yeah. And then he has to go through the whole trauma of, I'm going to be sick for this entire trip, and then I'm going to be down for a week.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be your fault, basically. And
it's going to be your fault, and I'm not going to go to work, and I'm not going to go to the show because you made me go to LA. Well,
then you get the perfect, I guess the cum shot of all NPD kind of events was Gary's dinner party, where he ended up blaming every single person, including the hosts, especially the hosts.
Oh God.
And he blamed Robin, he blamed Artie, he blamed like Benji, all kinds of people on, his bullshit, wouldn't ever accept culpability, which was funny in that the way that it manifests itself on the show, and it was still funny to listen to, but when you hear it through the glass, when you see it through the glasses of, my God, now I understand more about this whole psychological problem, then it's disturbing. It's a little more disturbing when you hear it like that. In the original incarnation, man, I laughed my ass off hearing Artie go, you should have brought your pajamas to the fucking party.
But you're right. It is seriously like a giant jerk off party in every direction.
Right.
Well, yeah, he didn't want to be there. Anytime that they're forced into something they don't want to do, let's even harken back to the Jingle Ball or whatever he had to go to with his wife. That was routine at best.
Yeah.
They will really make you suffer. I mean, he's scared of the world. He doesn't want to go into the world. He doesn't want anybody to control him. Control's a big thing. Believe me, if you try to do either of those things with this guy, you're going to take a fucking beating, a bad beating. And that's what he does. And when he got to Gary's, he made them take a beating. The poor band outside, he shut the door on. that was chef. One of the chef. He didn't care about dessert. They left. And everybody knew, we weren't there. He sent a message to everybody. And then on top of that, with the Jingle Ball.
The dog. Right.
Throw a few things through the window.
I'm surprised they weren't like, who fucking wants him here? Like, I'm glad he left as early as he did.
Well, you couldn't not invite him because then you'd have to hear about it for 3 hours on the air. Instead, you had to hear about how you invited him for 3 hours.
You can't win with him.
No. And then I love when they found that clip of the guy telling you the proper etiquette for leaving a party. Now, remember, this is very important. Make a quiet exit. They all started laughing.
The funniest part, too, is they all were silent when he left. Now, if it were me and somebody was that rude, I'd be like, what in the flying fuck was that asshole? I would have been like, what a piece of shit. Thank God he left.
I promise you they all said that. I guarantee they all said that. Oh, yeah. And he projected all over Beth. You told me you wanted to leave. And she's like, I didn't really want to leave.
And she goes, I only wanted to leave because you were miserable.
And you would have made me miserable.
That's exactly right. We have to do that one at one point.
She was eating her hair in the car. I guarantee it.
Yeah, flossing with that fucking,
On every day. She came here. She had a very hard life.
You want to know why I won't get on a plane and go to Europe?
Right, I know.
Are you crazy?
But you went on a plane to go see the Arsenio Hall show on Fox.
And Jimmy Kimmel parties.
Like when you went off on Tuesday about Germany, I mean, you thought you were in World War II.
Oh,
that you were hiding in the cellar.
But I really liked some of the moms.
Sure, it sounded like they were fun.
They were fun and
fun, yeah. You're looking for fun, right? They can't tell their children no.
Well, she couldn't tell them no. I mean, by holding, like you're right, actually, Bob. By holding the camp thing over him, it probably fell into a cruel and unusual the category of cruel and unusual punishment. But typically, if someone didn't do their homework, what would they get punished with back in the day? Grounding. You can't watch TV for whatever. In the old days, we're not talking about corporal punishment, just kind of standard stuff. But to say you're not going to camp, knowing that was his fucking escape, like you're not going to get out of my clutches. And then him talking later on, years like in another clip, about how when he went to camp, his parents never visited him, which is what you're not supposed to do anyway. You pick them up, you drop them off, and pick them up. And
we should play that clip.
I'd love to. I don't know. If it's part of this, but I don't remember exactly where. I'll see where I can find it. Go ahead.
Well,
where he pretends like the he doesn't have a family. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we should play that clip.
He's completely a lost boy. But he is saying here, that their parents don't tell them no. Well, maybe they don't need to be told no because their parents clearly probably have regular expectations for them laid out. They probably have regular, normal things. They don't have to go above and beyond. They don't live unreasonably and then all of a sudden lay out the kitchen sink. You're not going to camp. Out of nowhere.
Yeah, they're not. It's all about her, and she's taking away from him, and she's invalidating what he's saying.
I'm sure they've never even said to him like the expectation. Okay, so here's what you have to do and maintain this, and then here's what will happen if you don't. You know what I'm saying? Like this normal sort of protocol that goes on with school or whatever, and then. Instead, she has some emotional flippancy that just switches off and is like, oh, you didn't do your homework? No camp. I mean, it's just like.
And in the Ablo clip, you got him saying, maybe I'm not the right person for you. Maybe, maybe it's time. And he goes, Ablo's like, you're threatening abandonment, basically.
Right.
Yeah,
well,
exactly what he's doing.
That's exactly the same parallel. Like, why are we going from just talking about something
to DEFCON 5?
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, give me 1 sec, guys. I'm going to try to find this and put it on another media player because it's a 14-minute clip. I got to get to the exact part. So give me a moment. So, guys, we're basically I located the clip I was not sure I had. I knew I had it, but I didn't know exactly where. And we're only going to play about a minute, maybe a minute and a half. Then we'll go back to the original clip. But just because we brought up the camp thing, we thought, why not just tell you guys by playing you the clip itself? So here you go.
And there was a visiting day. And I would beg my parents, please do not come to visiting day. Now, I'm not even making a joke. I would say to them, please don't come. I so cherished the 6 weeks. It was only 6 weeks. If they would have made it 7 years, summer camp.
It would have been great.
It would have been. I wanted to live there. I can't even tell you how much I disliked living at home.
Wow.
This camp was everything to me. Yeah. My mother would threaten me during the year. She'd say, if you don't do well in school, you're not going to summer camp, Camp Walnut.
And it never occurred
to we'll let this one go through.
Her that you were most excited about being away.
Yeah. Well, it should have. That was a pretty good clue. And I'd go, and they'd have visiting day where the kids would get candy from their parents and all this, and I'd say, is there a way you could not come and just give me the candy? And my parents started to even schedule their vacation around visiting day. Like, they would not come as I got older.
Is that right?
And I so appreciate. Nice. I used to love. Now, this is very odd.
Okay, I'm gonna stop that. The reason I found that fun was because I have in this mind, like, Ben's going, I'm just going to go to fucking Panama with the wife and forget I even have a son. That's how annoying he must have been as a kid. Not even realizing that fucking Ray was laying a psychological airstrike on the kid. Sam?
No, I think Howard didn't want them there. And also, he got so old at some point at that camp, it must have been embarrassing to visit your old kid.
Were they bringing him cigarettes and
candy,
tequila,
beer?
So, one thing, what he's saying here, this is someone that's really distraught at home.
Yeah.
I mean, this is someone who is hearing about Holocaust death and hearing about a lot of possibly influential adult figures getting shit on constantly. This is someone that just doesn't want to deal with that for whatever kind of escape this is.
Because I could say from like going to Girl Scout horseback riding camp, like for summer, I remember when it was Parents Week visit or whatever, when they come to see you, of course you want your parents to come and see you. I was like 12, I think. Yeah, 11, 12. Yeah. I wanted my parents to come. I missed my parents.
Yeah,
what
we're doing.
Because they're security. Clearly,
I miss
they
my
weren't
parents.
They're not a security for Howard. Howard is genuine here when he's saying, I just didn't want them to, because there was a heavy emotional burden at the house, and the emotional burden was what he's talked about with his mom and what she went through and what he identified. And I know I don't know if I want to get fully into this right now.
Okay.
But I know that this is already a kind of a thick episode, as it already is.
Yeah,
but
we'll just keep playing.
There's one thing I want to say as this goes on, because I was thinking about this when I think Mikee Rex sent this over to us.
No, this was when I clipped.
Oh, okay, so yeah, that's right. You were like, is this relevant? I'm like, yes, this is relevant. So, when
I found it, I had to run it by Bob. I was like a mad dash to the email, like send an email. Like, Bob, I struck gold. I went through the fucking morass of tar and shit, and I found camp stuff that might actually be funny. Completely incidental while looking for another clip, and I saw the little write up of Mark's Frig, and I go, it was like. There's like the Twilight Zone. I just said I gotta get it. And by the way, guys, I'm gonna have to preface this with a little disclaimer. We are not explaining. We're just trying to go to the roots of why he's become such a shithead.
Yeah.
This isn't to excuse him as an adult not to be able to fucking have surmounted this horse shit and parlayed it in 40 years of bitching about it, which is really not what we're trying to do. We're just saying let's see where the early stuff takes us. Sam?
And I kind of find this more or less like also a discussion in NPD itself, which I find fascinating. And I think people can get a lot out of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but before this goes, what I was going to say when I heard this, and a lot of the stuff that goes on with his mom, why there's kind of a difference. I did have an interest when I was younger and kind of body language, and a lot of it has to do with if someone's being deceptive or not. And I don't know that that's necessarily a part of psychology. I don't really know what you would classify that under. But one thing with Howard, the way that I can tell whether he's being deceptive or being truthful is that, and I found this to be very consistent across the board and a very useful tool. When someone is telling you the truth, they tend to have a mid-pace rhythm. It tends to be consistent, like the actual way that they're presenting it to you. They tend not to stutter. They tend not to speed up. They tend not to slow down. They want you to hear everything that they're saying. When someone's telling you the truth, it's almost like a song and a rhythm is being told to you. It's very easy to follow. When someone's being deceptive, they'll speed up the pace. They'll slow down the pace. They'll buy time. And Howard is no different than anyone. When Howard is being deceptive, the main thing I've seen with him is that he speeds up. He wants it. He wants the attention off of them. And you and Raven, I think, did a thing where Ralph stole the money in Vegas. Or they had a debate over it. He clearly stole the money. And Howard,
it was me and Sam, but yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Sam.
And then Carrie and I took over the wrap-up show segment.
I nailed that.
Yeah. Okay, so that was. I just remember making a note. Howard was like, he really sped things up because he knew his friend was getting buried. Looked bad. Everything looked bad. He's like, already got late, and everyone was talking. Like his tempo sped up, and this is what
Fillmore pointed that out.
Exactly, and that's why I was coming back to it was because he wants it to end. People, when they're lying, they want the cognitive dissonance to end. They want it to speed up. They want the topic to change. Howard does this all the time, and he actually has a really distinct rhythm to when he speaks. And I think that's what made him such a good broadcaster when he really was doing well and in his prime. Mm-hmm. So that's why when he gets off that rhythm, it's so distinct for me, at least.
Oh, yeah.
But when the thing I've always noticed when he tells these stories about his mom, they always seem to be in this sort of mid-tempo thing. He doesn't really seem to miss a beat. He wants you to hear what he's saying, and it really seems to be truthful. He doesn't have his normal mechanisms.
But at a certain point, wouldn't it have just been wrote like him telling a story again, like something he learned and memorized, and that's why it doesn't miss a beat, because he's memorized these lyrics over and over in his head? So can we possibly attribute that to him just kind of telling the same story over and over again?
Okay, so here would be my answer to that. And people are very good at lying, particularly people with narcissistic personality disorder. They don't have the normal tells that other people have. Mm-hmm. But when he talks about his father, he talks in very vague terms. My dad used to just call me an idiot. Why would he call you an idiot? What was the context? People don't normally walk up and call anybody an idiot, right? I mean, even if there is no context, there's a context. Oh, he's drunk, or he's just an abusive guy, or whatever. With his mom, it seems like it all kind of adds up, and it does sort of. First off, we've seen her be abusive to him, which will show later on in this publicly, where she's calling him a wuss, and that he didn't go anywhere. He was a zero, and he was weak. We've never seen that with Ben. And then on top of that, we don't really see the storyline of TM coming in to curtail Ben. It's all very vague. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's when you need to look at the larger context. But go ahead.
When he was saying stuff about the tone of voice, and which I actually found very interesting, about when he's being honest, and his prime, about when we really took him in as a genuine broadcaster and believed it and seemed genuine. Mm-hmm. And what was the context, and what were the things that he was talking about? Well, he was trashing celebrities. Mm-hmm. He was trashing people. He was talking shit about people. And it was him and Artie and other the crew, and they were doing the things that he did with his mother. Yeah. Let's talk shit. Let's talk shit. And that was his most comfortable. The same shit he did with his mom about Mrs. So-and-so and blah, blah, blah. That's when he was his best, when it was opening up the paper, who fucked up today, and let's trash Oprah, let's trash Lena Dunham, let's trash whoever.
Look at what he said. This was how he connected with his mother. Look, so this is how he connected with his mother. This is how he connected with his audience. That's why when all of that stopped, he lost his audience, because we weren't connecting with him anymore. Like this was the only way he ever developed. I think a lot of how you interact with your mother is how you learn to deal with people in the world, because your mother just has sort of an emotional intelligence. And so Howard's emotional intelligence, the way he connected with people, was, like he said with his mom, trashing people. What's with Oprah? She's fat as fuck. We would all laugh about it, And then the second that stopped, we were like, okay, we can't connect with this guy anymore. He trashed his wife, and people were like, oh, yeah, I'm in a shitty marriage. I get it. But then all that kind of stopped.
If you isolate him, his trashing wasn't actually that original or funny. It was the characters in the background that were actually delivering the comedy of it and doing the show. But
and Sam, And Sam, by the way, I didn't mean to cut you off. The reason why, now you just touched on something that immediately put a light bulb in my head. Because we attribute his awful interviews to him just being a fucking 79. But the other reason why these interviews are so horrendous, beyond not knowing anything what he's talking about, beyond just being an old doddering fuck, is that he actually can't relate to a person not trashing these celebrities that are now in his studio. So when he was trashing people, and then he would have a guest on, he was in his comfort zone, so he could do it. But then now that he's not allowed to trash people, or only certain people, which now at this point, who does he trash? Anybody. And he doesn't even mention people who used to work on the show. He edits them out practically from every fucking video that you see on his channel, as if they didn't exist anymore. So that's not trashing anybody. He doesn't trash politicians that he thinks are hot. He just, when Andrew Cuomo went under, when all of a sudden it was incontrovertible proof that this has gone down, or this, like, he's absolutely finished, his career is over. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's not relevant anymore.
Yeah, whatever.
No need to even discuss it. No need to discuss it.
Whatever is blue check friendly.
Well, look at so there's one thing we can all agree on. He was not honest about when he went on his sexcapades. Can we all agree that he was not running through Manhattan's?
There's no mad terror.
So look at when he's talking about that. He's talking about it at a super. Oh yeah, that girl. Yeah. Write her name down. Oh yeah. Like, look at the speed at which he's just going so fast. He wants the attention off of him. Like, I know that he's fucking lying that entire time, because the way that he's speaking is not the way he speaks when he tells the truth. It's not a mid-tempo thing where you want people to hear you. And I've seen him do that before, where he really speeds up the tempo when he's lying about either relationships he's had, or, he lies about a lot of stuff. Yep. But yeah, that was a classic example of his sexcapades that never happened.
Yeah, the 24-hour, the 3-month beard, basically the beard conversation designed to, cover the fact that he was probably getting down the down low with Ralph and maybe Cabby. I'm going to look more into that whole Cabby, Beth, Howard, the origin story one day, because
John Stamos.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, these things are whitewashed completely. He doesn't even mention Cabby anymore, and yet for years, he was there that night. He was there. He could have been with her. Well, then why don't we mention him anymore, even if he is a part of the past? So we'll continue with this one, guys. I want to hear that one specific audio of that camp.
I used to love to wander around the camp and watch the families with one another and pretend to be an orphan.
What?
I loved that. I loved it.
What did that mean, though?
I loved it. I loved that I was free, and they all had parents and I didn't.
Did you?
Yes, Benji.
Did you fantasize at all that one of the families would take you in?
No. I wanted nothing to do with any of them.
You loved the freedom of no family at all.
I loved all the kids at the camp. I hated adults. I've got no nerve.
He used that keyword. I had to cut it off because it was 30 seconds, guys. But nourishment.
From adults. I got no connection from adults. I didn't understand adults.
So seeing them with their families,
you never got
made you feel even more free?
No, yes. Yeah. I felt free.
Like, did you say, oh, that's so sweet that they're loving their families, or that wasn't part of it at all?
It wasn't even that deep. It was just, I was free. I wanted to be free.
But you never saw a relationship that you wished you were in?
No.
Okay.
Bob, I know you have something to say.
You can set a metronome. He never misses a beat on this. This is how I know he's telling the truth. Like, every time that one comes back in, like, it's just a seamless. He has a seamless way of communicating here. He's absolutely being honest. Whatever you just
about
said
that specifically.
Absolutely.
And the observation is so. The observation itself is just bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that he didn't. Also, the fact that he didn't empathize, or not empathize, but like feel. Yeah, I guess empathize.
Because you don't want to be an orphan. I mean, that's not something you want to ever be. That's not something you hope for.
Unless you want to be free of whatever this emotional
you have.
Is.
Yeah, the restrictions, the loony bin that you've been this permissive loony bin that he was made to be a part of. Right. Let's continue with the original clip.
Oh, you're good at that.
Well, you got that down.
Oh my God.
You're not going to fit in. You're not going to wear blue jeans. I'd hate those disgusting blue jeans. After all, you should dress every day like you're going to meet the governor.
I'm not going to meet the governor.
You're going to dress like one, and you'll wear nice Levi slacks.
I looked like Tiny Tim all through high school.
Well, that never changed. You still look like Tiny Tim as an adult.
Oh my God, and walk like him.
Walk like, yes, I'm freaking like the Bigfoot in the $6 Million Man. Who was Andre the Giant, guys? A little bit of trivia.
penny loafers and slacks with my long hair.
Oh, boy.
And how I got the long hair, don't ask me. That was a struggle.
Yeah, that seemed to not bother her.
I had to cry a lot.
Was it a struggle to keep your hair long?
Yeah, I had to cry.
I don't doubt that he did.
Oh, I don't doubt it at all.
Whining, crying, anything. Like he talked like more recently, that whole Les Moonves thing. Not recently, but I would say in the last few years, where he talked about that whole revisiting, going to Les Moonves' office, who said he's going to sue him for talking about Sirius the whole entire time, year and a half after he'd signed with Sirius, and he was still on regular radio promoting it, and waited until he was done to say, "We're going to sue you," and he cried in the office like a bitch. Just as if the crying was going to work against a guy who thinks you fucked him, which you did, basically. Anyway, that's a whole other saga.
Lord.
I was like a big 6'2" crybaby. I want my long hair.
You cried for your hair.
But you like these other mothers and these children.
She hated all my friends, too. My friends were all bad.
All of your friends are bad. They're bad.
I go, they are?
Is that why you think you can't make close friends now?
I guess not. I guess there's something to that.
No, not that there's something to what your mother said, but that you believe what your mother said.
Oh, I do.
Well, I don't know how much Ray created the fact that he was an idiot and the fact that he had no social skills, but I mean, Bob, I'm sure you'll agree that she bears some blame if this really all is true. But
Absolutely.
The other, you're supposed to get past that somehow. Come on. I mean, you get a sport, for some people, it's as basic as I was part of the football team or the basketball team or track or whatever the fuck, rowing. I don't know, whatever the fuck it was in high school. And that's how association brings assimilation, basically. Sam?
Rowing.
Well, yeah, we had rowing.
He couldn't row. What is he going to row?
But the point is that a person, like a narcissistic parent that has their clutches in somebody so severe,
exactly,
they can't do that. They are paralyzed.
You're seeing a complete removal of an identity.
Yeah.
He's saying, well, I think this person is this way.
Your friends are terrible. Their mothers are terrible. The neighborhood's terrible. The movies are terrible. Everything he does is hers.
Yeah, that's why he could never. When I talk to my friends, I have an identity. If I'm like, hey, my friend Kyle's pretty cool, and then my mom was like, no, he isn't. He's terrible. The next time I see him, I don't even know how to interact with him. It's like, my mom thinks you're the devil. I was like, should we not hang out? I mean, I guess not.
Yeah.
Our parents, of course, have had. We've had friends in our lives where I'm sure our parents were less than thrilled with some of our friends.
For sure.
Like choices, Oh, yeah. But if they were all of them, then that would be weird.
Well, it would be weird for certain. And the other thing is the idea that as an adult like him, it would explain a lot more about why he could never settle on a look, because his mother didn't tell him, he had to be told something is a good look and it isn't. And, you're going to do this. And you're going to need someone to tell you what looks good, even if it looks like shit, and you'll just go with it.
You're seeing a complete destruction of an inner identity on every level. He's saying the way I identified with adults was wrong. The way I identified with my friends was wrong. The way that I identify with my parents was wrong. Everything was wrong.
Are we having fun?
Exactly. That's great. Oh, for fuck's sake.
One has a fresh mouth, and believe you me, his parents don't teach him properly. You will be hated, and I will be your only friend.
My one friend.
Believe me, those friends are
overrated,
fat, dirty, filthy. Go sit in your room where you're safe.
This is like, the more you listen to it, the more you kind of cringe and get like, you almost get like this, that film on your teeth that feels like you got an Angora sweater in your mouth, and you can't wait to scrub it off. That's how I feel now listening to his impression of Ray, if that really did happen, like if that was an exchange they had.
I think it happened, and I think here we have his dad. The only thing he'd say is, "You're a moron. You're a moron." Here he just did like a fucking 10-minute impression in detail, talking about his friends. Like, no, this is where you're getting your fucking problems from, dude. Like, this is weird. You just seamlessly went on.
Norman. He really is Norman Bates, man.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a fluoride treatment at the dentist. It's like terrible. I mean, it's just brutal. And when you're hearing it go on and on and on, like, and just go to your room and sit there and don't come out and hide from everybody. Now, anytime he's ever tried anytime he's tried to get an identity and socially interact, like in one of his sort of personalities, whether it be after the divorce and he's Mr. Strip Club and, whatever sort of clothing he's wearing and whatnot, what happens? He immediately kind of reverts back to hide, go back in. It's like it's either go full out and then go right back in. It's
overcompensating or treat, right?
Or the idea that he needs, like, I'm just thinking about that Arsenio again, that appearance that he had to fly over there, couldn't fly over by himself. He needed Gary to accompany him. And then
Mommy Gary.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then when I'm going out in the town, I need Ralph to be with me, and then security guards. I need security guard. Like in New York, you don't need maybe now you do, I don't know, but in the the heyday of Stern, do you really need security guards in New York? We had a whole conversation about this. You can just go out. Most New Yorkers leave you the fuck alone because they know, like, it's a very commonplace for people to just leave each other the fuck alone.
He needs wingman for wingman for wingman. Like, he cannot approach a woman.
No way.
He needs, and he talked about it. He's like, that's why I have Ronnie. Ronnie will go up and say what blah 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 to a chick. And he's like, I need, like, he needs that. There's no way that he could ever deal with a chick going, oh no, you're fucking weirdo. I'm not
even
doing
on
that.
Even on the show, when he would do his assertive, kind of absurd, disgusting lines to a woman that he thought was flirting, or, shock jockey radio, and say a woman said something back to him that kind of was flirty back, and she was even hitting back more forceful, you would see him revert, like,
Yeah, he's a huge wuss. That's why
I don't know what to do now.
Yeah,
his appearances on, like, Jimmy Kimmel and Dave Letterman, and I hate watching because they're so overcompensating, and I can just see this guy is terrified, and it's just so over the top. The way he takes it over, it's just like, dude, relax.
Well, I guess my mom had a lot of fears. She grew up terribly.
I think she was a little paranoid.
Yes. She had a horrible upbringing. She had a tough life.
Yeah.
And don't I know it?
Oh, you think you have it bad? Well, listen. I was passed off from family to family. My mother died when I was 9. I had no one, except for my sister, who passed away. And then my father, your grandfather, who I want you to love, and you don't need to know all this.
Okay, here comes the horror story about the grandpa.
I'm telling you this, but I shouldn't be. He would pass us off from family to family. And then one day he remarried, and I was so happy because I got to go home and I would have a family. And he ruined that. He got a divorce from that woman. I loved that woman. She cooked us food and did our laundry. I never had a doll. I never had a clothing. I only had one pair of underpants.
Okay. So this is, to me, this sounds like when she's saying, I shouldn't be telling you this, but I'm telling you this. Okay.
I'm going to tell you. Yeah.
All right. So we're plowing through that, we're plowing through that curb. And then we're going right through to this. I love this woman, but she divorced and took her away. So this sounds like some sort of, I'm upset about what happened to me, so you're going to pay for it.
Pretty much.
It sounds like you are really into your own bullshit. Even if you went through all that, you don't put that on your kid.
No.
I mean,
you're going to hear it.
You figure out, like, there's a lot of shit I went through. My kid doesn't need to hear it when he's that young. I'll tell him when he's fucking 30. You know, like that. No one wants to hear that about their parents. That's heavy shit.
Okay, so what's the combination? Hold on. What's the combination of giving the kid everything he could have ever wanted, but then also filling him up with all this like dread and all this stuff that really he should, as you said, should take as an adult. If you want to go down that route and tell him the real stories, why not just wait? But it doesn't seem like it's like if you want this, you're also going to take this. You got to finish off the plate. Whatever we give you is what we're giving you. Take it or leave it.
Well, what do you mean? What is it? What it is now is Howard Stern, because it's a combination of those two things.
That's what I'm saying. Like I could understand his antipathy or his inability to really emote if he'd been raised by two emotionless parents or really austere and really like fucking stern, pardon the expression, stern, or a super corporal punishment, like he'd beaten. Like I can understand if he turned into an out and out sociopath more than I can, which he might be anyway, but I can understand it more if he had more extremely negative parents. And I don't know that it was always the case. It's just, I find it fascinating. I just want like this whole trajectory.
His mom was an extremely negative parent. Listen to what he just talked about.
Yeah,
that's not a positive parent. That's not a nourishing parent, as he says. That's not a supportive parent. That's someone that's wrapped up in their own bullshit. That's traumatizing you.
But his dad would have been. But except that he's not really
around. His dad's an old school guy. He didn't know how to fucking cup his balls. I mean,
he probably wanted.
I'm gonna give a little bit of devil's advocate, or I'm gonna say a little levity here. When I do see Ben and Ray interact with one another, they have a levity about each other that is jovial and engaging, and I've always enjoyed their interaction with one another, and I have always enjoyed them on the air. So there is something about their personality that is quite engaging. I'm not saying it might be the best to grow up with, and clearly in these clips it's super abusive.
But they healed that later on, and Howard talks about in other interviews where his dad actually said to her a couple times, let's become alcoholics, because she was so self-absorbed, so depressed. He didn't know what to do with her. She's completely narcissistic. She's completely into her own bullshit. She's laying it on her kids. She's laying it on her husband.
Right.
And he didn't know what to do with her. So he said, hey, let's become alcoholics. That's how much despair was in that home, that the father actually asked her if they should become alcoholics. That's how bad it was.
So that's the problem I have with Ray, is you don't lay it on your kid.
No.
I don't care how bad it is. You don't ever put it on your kid.
Yeah,
ever.
Exactly.
Your kid shouldn't know. Ever. It's not her fault. They don't know. You go on, and your kid should never know. If something goes on with one of your other parents or co-parents or whatever, they shouldn't know. It's not their fault. It's not their business. Period. End of story. You know what I'm saying? Their life should go on happily.
And this is the root of
but
Howard.
as an adult, if you actually ask your parents, they shouldn't be afraid to tell you what really happened. If you're, so it has to do with
As an adult, if that child wants to ask that specific parent, that's their business. But I personally think, for a child, I don't ever want to put any shit in. It's not. Ever.
Not before it's time.
But this is what happened to Howard, though. This is the whole point.
That's bad.
He got this whole story and everything, so much to the extent that he lost all sense of self, which is what NPD ultimately does to a person.
Okay.
And this is really the core and the beginnings of what we see now, which is his own NPD, which is essentially, like I've pointed out a few times, just a reincarnation of what he went through with his mother. And why?
So what did he do to his kids then?
He neglected them.
He neglected them.
How much have you guys covered that?
So then wasn't that an ultimate favor?
I think it was because they got raised by Allison mostly.
Absolutely, yeah.
In the same way, would you say that he would have been better served if Ray was in the workforce and Ben had spent more time with him instead and just given him like a solid work ethic? Just come on, let's do this. Come on with me. I'll show you how to do recording. I'll show you how to modulate things, whatever. It certainly seems like it would have been more stable.
Sure.
I think Ben should have taken him to work every day.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but he couldn't. I mean, you're talking about a guy from the 30s, 40s, 50s that was in the military. I mean, he went through his own struggles and he probably didn't really know what to do. And I think he was a good guy. I think that he was a stand-up guy, and everything seems to point to him at least trying to make things right. But again, he was a human being at the end of the day. And a lot of people that grew up during that time had fathers like that. But a lot of people also had mothers where it was their full-time job to sort of be the at-home nurturing thing. In Howard's case, his mom came from a pretty traumatic background. And again, I don't think she really knew what to do, to be honest with you. And I think that's just kind of who she was. And she had suffered a lot of abuse. She transferred that abuse over to Howard. But I do think his dad was a little bit of a better soul. I can say that much. I think he's a stand-up guy. And go ahead.
But don't you think, though, then it is, even though we shit on Howard for being neglectful, which it is shitty, but ultimately it is the better thing to do.
It is. I mean, definitely in his case.
Because he would ultimately fucking destroy them.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, but my question would have been, was it organic or was it incidental? Like, I don't think he had a thought in his head, like, I'm going to save them by not being their parent, not being present. I think it wasn't even, he didn't even give it that consideration. It was strictly, I don't want to fucking be a parent.
I think Howard's understanding of what adults and parents were, what we heard in that clip, was they're into their own bullshit. Parents are different from kids. Parents do what they need to do. Guys are into their own stuff. And that's all that Howard did. I'm into my own bullshit. I'm into jerking off. I need my own room. Not super into having these kids. I don't really want much to do with them. I need to do what I need. Like, that's at the end of a lot of, you brought up kids that have parents with NPD. At the end of the day, the main thing that you see is neglect. It's not so much physical abuse. It's not as much verbal abuse. You do see that. You see a lot of that. But you just see people that are so into their own shit, they don't really have a relationship with their kids. And in a lot of ways, that is the abuse, is that you're not actually functioning as a parent. You're so into your own bullshit. His mom crying about shit that happened. Like, and not that that's not tough stuff, but for me personally, if you're bringing somebody into the world, which I've never done, you need to figure out a way to put that shit to the side, or don't have kids.
Yeah, I mean, or tell someone else. Go to an actual therapist.
Tell somebody else. Yeah, don't put it on Howard or whatever. The daughter, I guess, recognized early on, my mom is just here to destroy my happiness. She seemed to be able to deal with it in a better way, but I'm sure she has her own problems too. I mean, I don't know anything about her really, but I'm sure she has problems. Yeah. Because someone this dysfunctional where you're worried about her committing suicide, I can't imagine dealing with that as a kid, honestly. Worried about my mom.
But again, he wasn't a kid when that happened.
Okay, well, he wasn't a kid when that happened, but she was an extremely miserable person. It sounded like most of the time. And then it sounded like whenever the sister died, that was sort of the catalyst for her to really go into whatever it was that she was in. It's almost like someone's a chronic alcoholic and then they have this catalyst to just drink vodka all day, you know.
Well, I think I know for a fact we have addressed it on an episode. I can't for the life of me have the recall to remember exactly which one, but my contention was that when it did happen, Ben was concerned about her personally because it's his wife. Obviously, he loves her and he cares about her. He wants to see her well. My contention was Howard didn't give a fuck about seeing her well, except that she could no longer provide for him if she was this distraught. So he was more about, how can I get her to the point where she's doting on me again? And she's treating me like, and I don't think he cared anymore. I think it was surface level. Like, she's not serving my needs anymore. So I got to get her to that point where she's able to again.
Right. Because again, she treated him like an appendage, but it was an appendage that she paid attention to all the time, fixated.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I could be way off. Maybe he really did love her and care for her, but I don't know. I mean, it's such a weird. And guys, I apologize also if we're too diffuse and we're all over the place, but we're trying to find answers ourselves. So it's a work in progress.
I don't think he really loved her. I think it was just more so a validation issue. And I think probably what we'll go into more in later episodes is where we hear her publicly insult him, you know, more than a couple of times.
Now that they're in this home and they're in COVID and they're in their apartment, and he's saying Ellen wants them out. Ellen wants them to be able to eat dinner in the dining hall. They're vaccinated. They have their boosters and whatnot, and they can have dinner with other people in the dining hall. And Howard will not let them out of the room. He must have some sort of conservatorship over them.
Yeah,
and so he's arguing with Ellen, I guess he said on the latest show or whatever. And she's saying, we just want to see other people. And he's saying, no, I just want you to live.
I think it's just,
you could have it worse that you have it better than the Taliban. You could be in the Taliban. You could be in Afghanistan. You could be an Afghanistan woman. So is it control?
It's a long-planned revenge, man. It's revenge over Ray.
He doesn't care about them or their well-being or anything. No, this is being sadistic, is what that is.
Because Ellen's saying and Ray's saying, what's the point of living if our quality of life is shut in one room every day and we're not living and we don't like it?
Yeah, and he's a sick guy.
And they're saying, and he's saying, who cares? You're alive, and that's all I care about. And he won't let them out.
That's why I do these podcasts. I mean, this is who he is.
Son of the year.
Sadistic guy.
Guys, we are going to continue. We're going to leave it off there for now. We hope you've enjoyed this particular brand of NPD that we've gone down. And now that we've started one, we know we can just fly into the next one real quick, and we don't have to go into more external clips not involving Wiggy. And we'll definitely this is all going to be super clip heavy going forward, guys. So again, we wish we could have had more in this one, but I think it's a good start. And leave us your comments, guys. How do you feel about in the YouTube session, on Podbean, even on Patreon? What do you feel about stuff we've discussed? Sam?
Yeah, and leave us your opinions, because I really like everybody's take on this subject.
Yeah, absolutely. And Facebook as well. I shouldn't disregard that. Guys, we just a quick plug, just to let you also know, the last 2 weeks of December, if I'm not mistaken, I got to get my thing, the 19th and the 26th, which is following into like the first week, the week before Christmas, and then the week before New Year's. We are not going to have a show on Sunday for the 19th and the 26th. We are going to have Patreon content going on at that time as well, but we need a break sometimes. We've had a long year and it's been really tough. And that's going to be our little break. So it's not we're going off the air or we're taking away the Sunday shows. We just need a break from being able to do the live chat and go in and just to refresh. Unlike Wiggy and Robin, we really do need to refresh our batteries. So just giving you a heads up. And we love all you. And we hope you don't think we're pieces of shit for leaving you alone for 2 weeks. Because the other thing is also during that week, it's so busy and a lot of people can't make it in the live chats anyway. So they end up listening after the fact. So we just wanted to give you guys also a break and not feel like you got to hang with us for 2-3 hours to talk about this piece of shit.
And don't you want to see all your NPD relatives around Christmas time?
Yeah,
thanks, guys.
This was a heavy foundational episode. We'll keep it lighter going forward, but we had to lay some groundwork on this one.
Right.
Yeah, now go crawl in a ball and cry.
That's right. Wait till we start playing clips like I could hold out 2 hours with my mother.
The biggest wuss that ever lived.
Exactly.
My favorite one.
This clip is called Wiggy Explains What Ray Thinks of His Cats and Running.
I can't wait to hear that.
Remember when he used to run? I mean, like, that just blows my mind. He used to, like, jog.
Yeah.
Picture that stick figure insect running.
Yeah. Like the little skeleton in the Talking Heads video at the bottom, Road to Nowhere. Have fun, guys. We love you. Take care.
Pasta
I don't say pasta asciutta, I say pasticcio.
Pasta, that's what I say.
He's a phony Italian, Paul. He's a phony Italian? Yeah, phony. Why, you're Napolitano?
I'm Napolitano.
Sure. You don't understand Sicilia.
Altovilla.
No, Altovilla.
Era solo mano mangiata.
Sì, ma te l'ha mangiata tu.
Solo mano mangiata, ragazza.
L'ha mangiata.
È stupendo pesata che vado.
È stupendo pesata che vado.